Yeah, g'day YouTubers, Tinker O'Toole with another video. Hope you enjoy the video today. Please subscribe to the channel. Any comments, thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. Yeah, g'day YouTubers, Tinker O'Toole again here with another video. Today we're going to talk about the different type of chains that are available for the beginner. So first of all, we start off with semi-chisel. Semi-chisel mainly comes in two variants. There is a third, and that is semi-chisel. First of all, has a rounded corner. So where the top plate meets the side plate, it has a radius on it. There is a variant, I think by Oregon, that has a 45-degree chamfer on it. And there's also another one that's referred to a chipper chain, which is very, very similar to the old style one that was invented by Joseph Cox. Joseph Cox was the inventor of the chipper chain. His style was more of an S shape than a number 7, so you can still buy chipper chain that looks like that, but very few companies sell it because there's not much advantage over it at all, or virtually no advantage. So semi-chisel, let's talk about semi-chisel. It is the most commonly used chain. Probably 90% of saws out there use semi-chisel. It normally has a 30-degree top plate angle, and most chains have a 60-degree top plate cutting angle. That is actually when they're manufactured. When you look at a tooth, so if we're to look at a tooth here, the grinder comes in at this 60-degree angle here. This is the angle that's on the chain. So we'll try and get a bit of a close-up of it. You'll be able to see the chain. You'll see that nice rounded corner on there. And that nice rounded corner is what we refer to as the working corner, because there's actually quite a bit of room on there. So this is the first part that hits the timber here, and it takes a lot more to blunt than a full chisel. So that's your semi-chisel chain. That's what it looks like. There's your top plate on top, and there's your side plate there. And you can see that nice little C shape. Then if you view it from the back, you can see it that way. So these are all brand new chains, never ever been used before. So that's your semi-chisel. The next chain is your full chisel. Now, full chisel is a little bit more aggressive than semi-chisel. The top plate and side plate intersect at a 90-degree angle. There is no radius. It is about anywhere from 10 to 15% cuts more, but it blunts a little bit quicker. So there's all variants of the full chisel, and we've got a couple of variants here. And if we have a bit of a close look at it, you'll see that where the top plate and side plate intersect, you can see that very, very sharp corner. And it's that point that you can see there, that very sharp point there, is the one that does most of the work when it first hits the timber, and that's the reason it goes blunt, because if that point gets blunt, it's all over. You can see the inside of the tooth there as well. So that's your full chisel. More aggressive by anywhere from 10 to 15%, but blunts a little bit quicker. Top plate angle on that, again, you can have 25 degrees or you can have 30 degrees. 30 degrees is fairly common, and 25 degrees is just as common. So the difference is normally 30 degrees you're going to use it in softer timber, and 25 degrees in much harder timber. Now the next chain is a little bit different. It's called a skip chain. And the reason that it is different, if you have a look, you'll notice that where you see the tooth, you could put another tooth here, so it's missing a tooth. Now, this is a 20-inch chain, and the standard 20-inch chain has 36 cutters on it, so it's 18 cutters a side. A skip chain has 12 cutters per side, so it's 33% less cutters. Now, the reason being, it's used for milling, for slabbing timber. And they generally use full-chisel square ground chain, which is what this is, and we'll have a look at the profile, which is totally different profile. It's a variant of full-chisel, but it's different. It's even more aggressive than the standard full-chisel, but again, it goes a little bit blunter. But top plate angle on this is 11 degrees. Oh, no, sorry, 15 degrees. You can have it as low as 10 degrees. Some people prefer 10 degrees. It cuts very slow when you're slabbing a bit of timber. And one of the reasons that you can use these, you can have a longer bar on your saw, and if you've got a longer bar and you reduce the amount of cutters that it's got, you can get away with it. So in other words, let's just say you've got a saw and you want to put a 36-inch bar on it, but it's only it's a smaller saw of around about 80 cc's. You can get away with extending the bar and having it longer because you've got less cutters on it. Sure, it's going to cut a little bit slower, but you can get away with it there. So these chains sometimes can go on big saws like the MS880, and you may have seen saws where the bar's at least 6 foot tall, and they use them for slabbing timber, or they use them for cutting big, massive trees, and it takes quite a long time to do that. So let's just have a look at the profile. You'll notice there's two things that are really different about this type of tooth. This is what you call square ground. The side plate is about 80 degrees, and the top plate is only 15 degrees there. So that's 15 degrees. And if you have a look inside the tooth, you can see that special grind. So that's what's referred to as square ground. And you'll notice there, that's called the shelf. You can see that little, we'll just get the pointer. This part here is referred to the shelf, but you can see where the tooth goes right in here. Very aggressive. This is the most aggressive chain that you can buy, but if you had it on racing chain, you'd have this at about 35 degrees when they use them in racing. So this is the profile that they use, this square ground here, where they grind right into the middle. So what you can see here is a very, very sharp side plate as well. This is the most aggressive chain of all. But in this situation, it is aggressive, but so aggressive that you need to reduce this when milling. Okay, so that's a milling chain, ripping chain. As I said, it goes anywhere from a 10 degree top plate to 15 degrees. So it depends on what people prefer. Now, the last chain, and it's only come out in the last couple of years, I think 2021, is the Stihl Hexa chain. Now, it's a different variant of the the full chisel chain, and it's a little bit different than the square grind. The main difference between this and the standard full chisel is the actual tooth. The left and the right teeth are slightly smaller, the width of the cut, which is referred to as the kerf. A standard full chisel chain has a tooth of 4.5 millimeters in width. This Hexa chain, which is exactly the same profile, so it's 38063 gauge, it is 4.1 millimeters in width. So between the left and the right tooth, it's 0.8 of a millimeter narrower chain. So that's referred to as a narrower kerf. So that's one thing that's different. The second thing that's totally different is the geometry of the side plate. the cutter looks different. It looks like a V tilted on its side. So if you were to tip the chain up like that, it looks like a bit of a V shape. It doesn't look any different. You'll notice the 60 degrees that comes in. So this is 60 degrees coming in on this angle here, and it's 60 degrees going out on that angle going down. And they intersect at this point, which is about 2/3 on the side plate. There are variants of it that come down a bit further, but there's no advantage of it. You'll notice at the bottom of the gullet is flat where the file sits. So this part here acts as a guide on the file. The actual file itself, if we bring the file over, you'll notice there's a flat section of the file there. That flat section sits on the bottom, and you'll notice there's a little raised section on the file that sits on the top. So when we bring the file in, we'll just see whether we can get that. You can see, if I come back over here, you may be able to see it a little bit better. So in the file, this raised section will get the file sitting the correct way. There's the raised section. So that sits on up top. A little bit hard to see because of the darkness of the file. But the file sits in there like that. A little bit hard to see on this light. So this chain, this Hexa chain here, it actually cuts very, very good. It also lasts a little bit longer between sharpenings than a normal full chisel. So it's definitely got a lot of advantages going for it. A lot of people like it. A lot of people dislike it, but it's like anything else. So I've shown you 4 different types of chains. And as I said earlier, the most common chain out there is the semi-chisel, followed by the full chisel. And Hexa is now on the scene. You've got Husqvarna with their X-Cut, which is very, very similar. Now, let's look at the 3 chains except for the skip chain, because the skip chain is for milling, or unless you put a skip chain on a long bar because you want to cut some big piece of timber. But let's look at the 3 chains, semi-chisel, full chisel, and the Hexa, because they're probably the 3 chains that you could use on any type of saw. And really the slowest is semi-chisel. So if I was cutting a log, and that log was approximately about 14 inches in diameter, it'd probably take about 11 to 12 seconds to get through it, depending on the between 11 and 12 seconds, depending on how hard the timber is, and that's on a semi-chisel. On a full chisel, it might do it 1 second, 1.5 seconds quicker, and on the Hexa, probably about the same. There's not a huge deal of difference between the semi-chisel and the full chisel and the Hexa. Maybe a second at worst, 2 seconds at best. Now, 2 seconds is not a lot of time. Let's just say you were cutting a couple of 100 bits of timber, say 200 bits of timber. 2 seconds, that's 400 seconds. That's only a few minutes. So if you're going to cut a couple of 100 bits of timber, you're going to be out there for hours. You're going to be out there for 4 hours cutting a couple of 100 bits of timber. So what's a couple of minutes? A couple of 100 seconds is neither here nor there when you're out in the field for most of the day. So when it's all said and done, they're not gimmicks. If people are cutting down really big trees, some of these chains are more suitable. It depends on whether it's hard or softwood. So that's what it comes down to. It just depends on the type of timber And if you can reduce 10%, if you're going to spend a long time cutting a big huge tree down, then some of these chains are more beneficial. But for the average person out there cutting firewood, it's not going to make any difference. You take your pick whether you've got full chisel or semi-chisel. It's really firewood. It's neither here nor there. So I hope that helps. That's just a bit of a rundown. As I said, there are some other variants, but really they don't vary that much difference, and they're not going to make any difference at all. Maybe a fraction of a second here or there. And if you're talking of a fraction of a second here and there, it's really not a game changer. If someone was to bring out a chain and they said this chain cuts 30% faster, that would be a game changer, and everyone would be buying that chain. So, you know, just watch out for the advertisement. People that advertise out there, companies advertising saying our chain cuts faster. Technically and theoretically they're correct, but so what? A second here or a second there is really not going to make any difference in your day out in the field cutting firewood. Anyway, that's my opinion. That's what I actually think about the difference in the chains. I do prefer the Hexa, mainly because it's a little bit more aggressive and it cuts through a little bit quicker. Just that, yeah, it's 10%, 10 to 12% quicker. So I've got the choice of using a chain, and honestly, I think the Hexa will be the chain that a lot of people will be using in the future. It takes many, many years for people to change. People just don't change overnight because someone says it's better. People have to start using it, and I was using Hexa when it first came out, and I was going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. And the more and more that I use Hexa, I just find out that when I used it last time, I was out in the field and I was there all day, and I just thought I'm going to use Hexa all day. And I just felt that it performed that much better, and I don't sharpen out in the field. Now, the only other thing with the hexagonal, I showed you that hexagonal file. Still, if you've got a Stihl USG grinder, they do sell Hexa wheels. I do have a video where if you've got an Oregon grinder, you can put your own Hexa profile on there, because Hexa has got a spacing of 120 degrees. It's 60 degrees in and 60 degrees out. So that's 120 degree spacing. And I think the reason that Hexa works better, apart from having a slightly narrower kerf, and that's an interesting subject in itself, because having a narrow kerf, why don't all full chisel chains have a narrower kerf? Well, I can't give you the answer to that, but it's an interesting subject. It could be the way the chains may change slightly in the future. I guess we're going to have to wait and see. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye for now.